Let's talk about abundance. Abundance is a topic in which I have had a great deal of interest through the years. And so have many people. I recall sitting in a room full of people a little bit larger than this not too many weeks ago when I was facilitating a retreat in the beautiful mountains of Colorado in Estes Park. And in that room, a person said to me, "I wish I could experience abundance." And that was his issue. And he said, I don't make a great deal of money. I have barely enough to get by. I had to, really squeeze the pennies to get here, and so forth. And he said, I've all my life wanted to experience the kind of abundance that I see you, and he pointed to me in the front of the room, experiencing. And I said, well, if you really want to have the experience of abundance, why don't you spend our lunch hour giving abundantly of that which you have to give? And he looked at me, astonishingly enough, and he said, I have nothing to give. He really thought, he wasn't even making that up, he really thought he had nothing to give. And so I had to look at him and begin to say the obvious. Do you have any love to give? Oh, he said, and he wasn't even sure about that, but he, I think, had to concede the point that perhaps there was a morsel of love within him that he could give. He said, yeah, I suppose I have some love to give. I said, do you have any compassion? Does compassion reside within you at any level? Yeah, well, I suppose I have a little bit of compassion. People have called me a compassionate guy. He was having a hard time saying the word compassion in the same sentence as the word me. But he allowed as to how perhaps he had some of that to give as well. I said, do you have any humor? He said, oh yeah, everybody thinks I have a great sense of humor. I got enough jokes to last for a lifetime. I said, terrific. And we made a list of the things that he had in abundance. But of course, he didn't think that had anything to do with abundance as he was describing it. I said, okay, let's agree that we disagree on our definitions of what is abundance, but let's agree that you do have an abundance of these things. And we could agree on that. I said, great. Now, well, here's what I want you to do. Spend your lunch hour, and I want you to give of these things that you have acknowledged that you do have in abundance. Give of them in profusion. Give more than you ever gave before to everyone whose life you touch while we're on our lunch hour. That's my challenge to you. And he agreed to accept the challenge. And so he went off on the lunch hour, and he began to outpour that of which he had abundantly on everyone. There were like maybe 600 people at this place. 200 of them were in our retreat and 400 from other places. So there were lots of strangers who didn't know who this guy was or what he was up to. See, so he walked into the cafeteria, and it was like a major confront for him, because it was like, well, my group knows that I'm going to act crazy now. But the rest of these people don't know that I'm now going to act kind of nuts. Because you see, when you give of yourself abundantly, half the world calls that crazy. See, they say you must have something going on with you, something's wrong. People don't act that way, which of course is the problem. People don't act that way. So here he is walking up to people in the cafeteria, and he is sharing abundantly of that which is abundantly his. He's sharing of his love and his good cheer and his humor. He was telling jokes all over the cafeteria. Some folks were laughing, ha, 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 that's pretty funny. And other folks were laughing, ha, ha, ha. Who is this guy? But everyone couldn't help but have a little grin, even those who didn't think his joke was that funny. Couldn't help but grin a bit at this wonderful guy, this Santa, who just showed up in the cafeteria all of a sudden. And he was going around saying wonderful things to people, and one person, as it happened, was not in that good of a mood. And it was his opportunity to show some compassion. And he showed compassion by not telling any more of his bad jokes. But then he sat down next to that person, said, I don't know you, but I'm from this other group that's doing a retreat in the other lodge. Everything okay? Before he knew it, he had become involved in a conversation with God. And he got to express that part of himself. This guy came back from the lunch hour feeling so huge, see, feeling so big. And he said, I can't tell you. I said, how I feel. I said, do you feel abundant now? He said, yes, I do. I feel abundantly wealthy with all these grand parts of me that I haven't really given myself permission to express. That is to say, express, push out, to express, to push out. Hadn't given myself permission to do that. But what was really funny, and here's the trick that the group played on him, while he was at lunch, somebody went to the room and got their hat, and everybody in the room put money in the hat. So that when he got back to the room, the guy had like a lot of money in the hat, because the room just wanted to prove to him, you know, what goes around comes around and all that. It was this incredible in-the-moment experience of the truth. And he just sat there. This grown guy, the tears started to flow. And he had a direct experience of what is eternally so. That which you give to another, you give to yourself. And you can give it in one form, and it will come back in another. But it cannot fail to come back to you, because there's only one of us in the room. And his life changed out of his new awareness of what abundance truly is. So the first thing I want to share with you about abundance is, get clear what abundance is. And if and when you decide to give abundantly of the grandest part of who you are, with everyone whose life you touch, if you decide to do that, your life will change in 90 days. Maybe 90 minutes, be careful. Because people will suddenly get who you are. See, let me explain to you the difference. Here are two lawyers, and they both have an office on the same block in the same city. They both graduated from the same college, and they both graduated at the top of their class. So they have equal skill levels. It's not about location, because they're both on the same block in the same city. See? Yet one lawyer, lawyer A, is doing fabulously well, and lawyer B, just a few feet down the block, is not doing so well. What's that about? What's happening there? What causes one person to be the thing we call successful and another person not, given everything else being equal? What's happening there? Lawyer A is very clear. Plumber A is very clear. Doctor A is very clear. It's not about what he's doing. See, it has nothing to do with what he's doing. So be careful that you don't get caught up in a thought that your abundance, or what you might want to call your success in life, will come to you out of what you're doing. It will not. And if you haven't learned that, life will teach you that, because you'll do all this stuff. So you'll be doing this and doing that and doing this and doing that and doing this and doing that, and just wind up with a great big pile of doo-doo. And you'll wonder, how did I create this pile of doo-doo here? I was, I did all the right things. And then it will dawn on you, oh, I get it. It has nothing to do with what I'm doing. That isn't the connection. That isn't how all this good stuff that I think is going to flow to me is going to flow to me. And then we see another person down the street who appears to be doing nothing. And abundance is just flowing down upon him. Just you can't push it away fast enough. Say, well, that's not fair. How does he get to have all that? He's not doing anything, which is, of course, precisely the secret. He's not doing a damn thing. I mean to say, and I chose my words very carefully there, he's not doing a damned thing. And we've been spending our lives running around doing all these damned things. but he's being something. When he walks into the room, he is being something extraordinary. He is being love, compassion, wisdom, humor, joy. And he's being one. See, the highest level of beingness. He's being one. You know, when you go to a doctor, lawyer, plumber, dentist, whoever it is, anybody to whom you're going, the clerk at the post office, doesn't matter. When you're going to that person, you look into their eyes and you go, whoa, they get me. They see me. They're in a sense, although you might not articulate it this way, they're like one with me. This is we walk away and say, what a nice person. What a nice guy. Wasn't she sweet? That's our way of articulating, boy, I felt an immediate connection. This person doesn't feel separate from me. There are no barriers, there are no walls. So you get to decide whether you choose to be person or whether you choose to be a person. If you choose to be a person, person A, and give abundantly of all the magic that lies within you, the magic that lies outside of you will be attracted to you and become as much a part of you as you allow it to become. Got it? So the important thing for us to remember when we're searching for right livelihood is to stop looking for something to do and start looking for something to be. And to get in touch with that part that resides deep inside of you that knows who you really are and see what it would take to call that forth in a beingness way. So look inside. What is it that I'm being when I feel totally fulfilled and totally self-expressed? What am I being when that happens? Maybe I'm being a healer. Maybe I'm being sensual. Maybe I'm being creative. Or there's some level or state of beingness that would describe to you in a word or two the essence of what's showing up for you, what part of you that's really showing up big. But before I get into it, as I said a minute ago, before I get into a detailed explanation of that, I want to go to some other thoughts, first of all, that I have noticed block people from experiencing abundance, and that blocked me from experiencing abundance. And now I am going to talk about abundance in terms of dollars and cents. Many people hold the thought that money, per se, is bad. I don't know whether you hold that. And some people hold that thought almost unconsciously. That is to say, if you ask them directly, do you experience that money is bad? Is it your thought that money is bad? They would say, no, it's not. Money is good. Many people would say that. But they act as if it's bad. Do you ever have anybody do you a favor, and when you want to offer them a few pennies just to kind of compensate for some of the hard costs that you know they've put into it, they won't take the money? What do you suppose that's about? They don't want to take your thanks? No, they're happy to take your thanks. They don't want to take your money? No, they don't want to take your money for it, because somehow the exchange of money for the good thing they did for you at some level besmirches the exchange. You see, it drops it to a level that starts to feel icky. You see, there's a guy I once knew named Reverend Ike who used to say, I love money and money loves me. That's a great message. I love money and money loves me. And I don't declare that in my universe God is everything except money. But rather I declare God is everything including money. See? That money is just another form of the energy of life that we call God. So we need to get off of our idea that somehow money is bad. You know, we talk about filthy lucre, you know, and we talk about being filthy rich. And we use those phrases that give away what our inner thought is, or at least the inner thought of society at large is, about this. And I can tell you that society still holds this thought very deeply, because one of the questions I am most frequently asked, how does it feel for you to be going around the country talking about spirituality and making so much money at it? As if somehow I'm doing something wrong, you see? as if somehow that should be a warning to the public. See, big warning. See, look at how much money he's making off of this. And every so often I get a letter from someone who says, if you're really so spiritual, why don't you give away all of your royalties to the poor? See? Why don't you, for that matter, just put the book on the internet and let people have access to it for free? See? And the reason that we don't do that is that if we did that, the publishers would go out of business and the book could never be produced to begin with. See, somebody has to do the first thing called publish the book in some form. Even putting something up on the internet costs money. So because that's true, what we notice is that money is just the lubrication that makes the machinery of life work at this present time on our planet as society is currently constructed. And that's all right. See? So I refuse to go to that place that says if you were really a spiritual person, you'd give your book away, you'd take the royalties that you do get for it and spread it out among the poor, and you wouldn't take any of that for yourself. As it happens, just as a matter of information, Nancy and I and the foundation we've created do contribute a large sum of money each year to many, many worthwhile causes. That's not important. It's just what's true. It's just what's so. But, you know, I love making a lot of money because it allows me to do a lot of things, and I'm very clear what I want to do in the world. I'm very clear the changes that I want to cause to happen. And as I said, in our society, it takes that lubrication to make that occur. So what we have to do is get comfortable, is to get comfortable with money, as we have to also get comfortable, I might add, with our bodies and with each other. We have to learn to get comfortable with the stuff of life so that we can say, bring all that life is to me, and all that I am a part of life, I bring to you. And not be ashamed of any part of it, because God doesn't know from shame. Everything changes when you make a decision to be one of the courageous ones. Someone who chooses to make a life rather than a living. And that's when your whole experience shifts. You create a shift beyond belief when you change your thought about what you're up to here. When you decide, in fact, to make a life rather than a living. And that shift is so enormous that everything is altered in your experience, including your experience of money. And make no mistake about it, this is possible. There is never a time in life when you do not have a choice, ever. As a matter of fact, you have created the circumstances of your life, including this place that you call no choice, precisely to give you an experience of the choices that you have. You've actually created this apparent roadblock to cause you to notice that there was no roadblock to begin with. And some of you will notice that, and most people will not. And they will allow themselves to live the rest of their lives imagining that they had no choice. I had no choice is the most frequently used rationale for us doing what we wanted to do in the human experience. So we do what we want to do given the circumstances that are in front of us to either avoid or create an outcome, and then we say, I have no choice. But you do have a choice. And every choice you make, every decision you make, every thought you think, every word you utter, is an announcement and a declaration of who you think you are and who you choose to be. Every act is an act of self-definition. And you always have a choice. But remember this, no one ever does anything inappropriate given their model of the world. So not only are you always given a choice, you are always making a choice, and you're always making the choice that you think will best produce or avoid the outcome that will cause you to assist yourself in defining who you really are. That's what you're up to. Now, you may not articulate it in that way, but I assure you that's what the human soul is up to. And when you begin to see it that way, when you begin to frame it in that way, you see life in a whole different way. And you imagine life to be a grand adventure, because suddenly it becomes an extraordinary adventure, an adventure in self-creation. Now the secret, once you know this, is to not resist it, because what you resist persists. And what you look at disappears. What you hold and embrace, you make your own. What you make your own no longer resists you. That's why masters never resist the opposite of who they are, but rather see it as the grandest blessing. Bring on the opposite. Bring on that which I am not. For I will not only welcome that which I am not, I will merge and become so much a part of it that it will bless that which I am and cause it to have grand expression. See, all the universe is a field. Some people call it a morphic field. I call it a field of experience, a field of expression, life expressing life itself. It's a contrasting field, a field of contrasting elements, if you please. And it is only within this field of contrasting elements that any particular element can know and define itself as what it really is. That's true in the relative universe. Now, in what I've been told is called in our language the realm of the absolute, such a contrasting field is not necessary, nor is it for that matter even possible, because the realm of the absolute is by definition absolutely what it is. Do you understand? And there is nothing else. And we call that God. In my language and in my utterances and in my form of expression, we call that God. In the beginning, there was all that is. And all that is all there was. And there was nothing else. There was nothing else except all that is. And it was very good. But it's all that was. And there was nothing else. And yet it sought to know itself in its own experience. And so it looked outside of itself for something other than what it was, that it might know itself in its own experience. But it could find nothing outside of itself other than what it was, because there was nothing outside of itself, and there was nothing other than what it was, because it was all there is, and there was nothing else. How then to know itself in its utter magnificence? And so that which we call God ceased to look outside of itself, for there was no place outside of itself to look. It therefore looked within, that it might know itself. Not incidentally such a bad idea, should you choose to know yourself. To look within and not without. For those who fail to go within, go without. And so God looked within. And in the interior of that which is God, did God see all the magnificence for which it searched. And it literally imploded. That is to say, God turned herself inside out for us. And imploded into 1,000 kajillion different parts, going here and there, up and down, left and right, and all of a sudden, here and there, up and down, left and right, were created. Fast and slow, big and small, were suddenly created in that glorious moment, in that first thought that produced God in its kajillion elements, that each one of the elements racing from the center at a thing that was now called speed, and created the illusion that we now call time. Each of the elements could look back at all the rest of God and say, oh, my God, how wondrous thou art. And who among us has not done exactly that on a starry night or in a room full of people? Oh, my God, how wondrous thou art. There are 3 levels of creation. So we are each of us three-part beings made up of body, mind, and spirit, just as God is made up of body, mind, and spirit. So each of us are an individual duplication of the triad of energies which we call God. And that triad in our language I call body, mind, and spirit. And so we each have three centers of creation, or three tools of creation: body, mind, and spirit. That is to say, what you think produces energy in the universe that, if you think it often enough and long enough, will actually produce a physical result in your life. Anyone experienced that? Sure, most of us have. In fact, a guy back in 1946 wrote a huge best-selling book on this called The Power of Positive Thinking. You know, that New Age writer, Norman Vincent Peale. And our second level of creation is our words. As you speak, see, so will it be done. And so your word is really a form of energy. You're actually producing energy in the room with what you say. And that energy is creative. You say something often enough, loudly enough, and I promise you it will come to pass. If two or more start saying the same thing, I assure you it will come to pass. And when a whole group of people start saying the same thing, it cannot help but come to pass. This is called group consciousness, and it's, by the way, why the world is the way it is. Because our collective consciousness has not allowed itself to be raised to the level of the individual consciousnesses of many of us. So our job is to raise the, what? Collective consciousness. Now our actions, of course, are the third level of creation, that which we do with this huge, huge collection of energy called our body. We start, and this is a very gross level of creation, very gross level. I mean, I'm moving the air right now. Just moving your hand through the air is a huge, huge movement of energy here. That's why you can literally push energy towards someone. Anyone ever come up to you when you weren't feeling well and just literally stand there with their hand over your head and do nothing else? And in 5 minutes you can begin feeling that, or 5 seconds sometimes, feeling that warmth, that vibration. And doggone it, sometimes if you don't go, I don't know what you just did there, but whoa, do I feel good. Now, of course, if you go even further than that, I'll do this here with this lady who happens to be my wife. If you go even further than that and actually touch each other, incredibly magical things can happen. Because the energy has even happened over there, you see that? Incredibly magical things can happen. Because the energy is very gross and very, not very big, very heavy, very, very real. Now, the problem we have in life is that most often people think one thing, say a second thing, and do a third. That is to say, they do not, as the kids would put it, have it all together. So they think one thing and they do another. Or they say one thing and they think another. Or they don't say what they're thinking, or they don't do what they're saying. Now, I know that none of you in this room have ever had that happen to you in your life, but in my experience, there have been times when I have encountered that conflict between the three centers of my creation. So I often do not want to tell people what I'm actually thinking because I'm not real proud of what I'm thinking. Then why are you thinking it? God only knows. See? Or sometimes, lately I've started to monitor my thoughts, and I've started to, when I get a thought in there that I no longer choose, that's not really who I am, I don't give it a second thought. See? I literally don't give it a second thought. I just throw it out. And if you don't give it a second thought, it no longer has power. Because the nice part about this energy is that it's very thin, very ethereal, and you have to keep thinking it and thinking it and thinking it and thinking it over and over again until it's thunk so much that it becomes very heavy with collective energy. I'm literally explaining to you the physics of the universe here. Life begins to change for you when you begin to say what you're thinking and do what you're saying. And then you have it all together, and you start to create from all three centers of creation, and suddenly you begin to manifest and produce extraordinary results in your life in a very short period of time. See, so So thought, which is the most ethereal form, or when I would say the thinnest, to use a simple word, the thinnest form of this creative energy. And then your word is the next thickest, to use a simple word, the next most dense. And then, of course, your action, I started to say, is a real dense form of moving energy around in a real gross manner. All right. So one of the fastest ways to create something in your physical reality is to reverse the normal process by which we create things. Usually we create things first by thinking about it. I think I'll go to that party. And then we say something about it, as in, Matilda, I'm coming to your party tonight. And then we do something about it, as in showing up at the party. Here I am, just as I said I would be, because I thunk the thought this morning. Okay? That's generally how we produce things in our reality. In fact, everything in this room was once a thought in someone's mind. There is nothing that was not once a thought in someone's mind somewhere. But if you want to really play tricks with the universe and create magic with the stuff of life itself, reverse the thought, word, deed paradigm. Turn it upside down and start with the deed. That is to say, act as if. If you want to experience abundance, be abundant and do as abundance does. Therefore, if you have only $5 left to your name, go to a store and get them transferred, made into singles, and take 5 singles and walk down the street and give a single to each of 5 people who have even less than you do. And by the way, you will find those people very easily. You will always find in your experience someone who has less than you, no matter how little you think you have. Not because the world is such a terrible place, but because you will create it in your reality in order to give yourself the experience I'm talking about. So you'll walk down the street and you'll see this. Now, by the way, when you see this person who has less, don't feel sorry for them. Get that you put them there. See? Otherwise, you'll see that little soul and you'll start to have pity on that soul. Do not come from pity with anyone. Come from caring. Come from love. But get clear that love is not pity. As a matter of fact, pity is about as far from love as you can get. So do not come from pity, but come from compassion. Compassion says in your mind, oh, there's a person who thinks they don't have what they could have in life. There's a person who still is caught in a belief system that creates a construction around their reality that's other than my own and other than the ultimate truth. And have that compassion, but never have pity. And so you walk down the street and you give the last of your $5 away. Now what happens there? What's going on? You've reversed the thought, word, deed paradigm. You're now doing what the person who comes from abundance would do. And you begin giving away what an hour before you made that decision you couldn't imagine giving away because you thought you didn't have enough. But now you're clear that you have more than enough. So much more that you choose to give it to others. Now, as you're giving this away, you're creating in your body, which is a very gross level of energy, an experience. The body is noticing cellularly, oh my gosh, I'm giving this money away. Look at this, I'm even letting it go. And you will discover that it makes sense for you. Dollars and cents. And money loses its value the moment you try to hang on to it. Money only has value when you're willing to let it go. Money has its greatest value when it leaves your hand because it empowers you to be, do, and have something that you choose to be, do, and have. Money's only value is when it leaves your hand. When you change the be, do, have paradigm, you start acting as if, and your body begins to understand at a cellular level who you think you really are. I have that which I would choose to receive. I already have it. Now, once you cross that huge barrier, because you think you don't have it, and you're trying to get that which you do not have, namely more money. But once you get that you have it, then it just becomes a question of how many zeros are after the first number. You understand? And so you'll discover that what goes around indeed does come around. Not because you've performed some real, true magic trick in the universe, but because you finally got the truth of who you are at some universal cosmic level. And the universe never says no to your thought about yourself. It only grows it. Did you hear what I just said? I said the universe never says no to your thought about yourself. It only grows it. I mean, the universe is really wonderful. You'll love God because God grows on you. Whatever it is you think you would like to be, do, or have, cause another to be, do, or have that. See yourself as the source rather than the recipient of what it is you would choose to experience in life. For you are not, in fact, the recipient, but you have been and always will be the source. When you imagine yourself to be the source of that which you wish you could receive, you become very resourceful. And then you do become a magician. You do become a magician. Therefore, these 3 words to always remember. Have these words tattooed on your left wrist. Be the source. Be the source of that which you would choose for another. Come from that place of, I am the source. If you want more magic in your life, bring more magic into the room with you. If you want more love in your life, bring more love into the room with you. Be the source in the lives of another of that which you would have in your own life. If you want more money in your life, bring more money into the life of another. Whatever it is you want more of. If you want more compassion in your life, if you want more wisdom in your life, be the source of wisdom in the life of another. And through this process and the process of beingness, the process of being who you really are, you will bring yourself the experience of right livelihood virtually overnight. And the world will shower upon you all the rewards for which you reached in vain for so many years. So allow your doingness to spring from your place of beingness. Be happy, be abundant, be wise, be creative, be understanding, be a leader. Be who you really are in every moment of your life. Come from that place and let your doingness spring from that place. And you'll not only find right livelihood, you will have created for yourself a life rather than a living. Thank you.